It's important to understand the cultural context of ancient Egypt. By the time of the Second Intermediate Period, Lower Egypt in the north was the main area where Eurasians were coming in and becoming Egyptians, by taking on the indigenous Nile Valley traditions and customs. Back migrants have been coming into northern Egypt since the Old Kingdom, and their numbers continued to increase all throughout ancient Egyptian history. This is one of the many reasons the Hyksos, aka Hyksos, were able to take over northern Egypt. Some will try to use photos that depict Egyptians that may look like Eurasians in order to steal credit for this great African civilization. However, there are many flaws in their logic when taken into account historical context. Don't be fooled and argue over the validity of such depictions because there were back migrants who became Egyptians. Instead, we should focus on learning historic occurrences that help shape the culture. Anyone who is vaguely knowledgeable about the state formation of ancient Egypt are privy that it began not in northern Egypt where Eurasians were coming in, but instead it began with black African pastoralists who were mingling around the Sahara and Nile Valley areas around the border of Sudan and Egypt. This is the reason why ancient northern Sudanese are genetic relatives to ancient southern Egyptians, where the kingship derived. Realizing the contrast in the population of Upper Egypt versus Lower Egypt will allow you to understand ancient Egypt in its proper contexts, despite the biased articles that are sometimes written to place Egypt outside of Africa. Dynastic race theory is a now outdated opinion that ancient Egypt was originally stated by the back migrants coming into Africa rather than it being started in Africa by indigenous Africans. Reputable scholars today all concur that ancient Egypt was indeed an autochthonous African culture. All the genetic testing of ancient Egyptian populations have taken place all in Lower Egypt. With the lack of genetic representation that we have of the southern population, it is poor and disingenuous research methodology to use current lack of genetic studies to say who the ancient Egyptians were.